Welcome to the deep dive. You've given us a really substantial piece of work, and our goal, as always, is to pull out the most vital insights, those
Yeah.
aha moments that really help you grasp the core of the material.
Exactly. We're looking at a book called The Coming Wave, and yeah, we've got a detailed chapter by chapter exploration lined up.
So we'll move through this text pretty much sequentially.
Yeah, almost like we're reading it alongside you, trying to pinpoint the author's main arguments and how their thinking kind of unfolds.
And it looks set to cover a huge amount of ground. I mean, this source digs into everything from AI, biotech, and
Geopolitics, the future of society itself, it's ambitious.
definitely. So you should probably get ready for some potentially surprising facts and hopefully those moments where things just click.
And it's worth remembering the author founded DeepMind. That background gives a pretty unique perspective on all this, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. A really informed lens.
Oh.
Okay, so let's dive in right at the beginning, the prologue.
Right. The text kicks off with a prologue that grabs you immediately. It starts with a short piece that was actually written by AI.
That's quite a way to open things, a bit meta, isn't it?
Mhm.
What really stood out for you in that AI piece?
Well, the main themes are all about the huge transformative power of this coming wave, AI and biotech primarily,
Huh.
but also the inherent dangers that come with that kind of power. It draws parallels to really big historical turning points, fire, electricity.
Right, those moments that fundamentally changed everything for humanity.
Exactly. And the language the AI uses is pretty potent. It talks about godlike powers, both creation and destruction.
Sets the stakes incredibly high from the outset. It's not just about clever tech. It's framed as something much more fundamental. A sobering thought for you, really.
It really is. And it immediately sets up this core choice that the prologue presents. On one side, unparalleled possibility, and on the other, well, unimaginable peril. It's stark.
Is it black and white?
Yeah, and it finishes by saying, this new era demands we face its challenges head on. Be prepared.
And then comes the reveal, right? The author says, hey, that thing you just read, AI wrote it.
Precisely. It's a really effective demonstration right up front, showing you the kind of capability they're about to dissect in the book. It makes it tangible.
Okay, so that sets the stage perfectly for Chapter 1. Containment is not possible. Wow, that title doesn't pull any punches. What's the core argument there?
Well, the title gives it away, really. The main idea is that we're at the dawn of this incredibly powerful new technological wave, mostly driven by AI and synthetic biology.
Right.
And the author uses this analogy of technology coming in waves, like floods almost. Once they start, they just spread everywhere, and they get easier and cheaper to use over time.
So it's not just one invention, it's a whole interconnected surge of things building on each other.
That's it. And this wave is different because it targets intelligence and life itself, things we think of as uniquely human.
Hmm.
The chapter really stresses the dual nature. The benefits could be immense, sure, but they're tangled up with unprecedented risks, like societal disruption, instability, maybe even catastrophe.
And the author's take on our ability to manage this is pessimistic.
Initially, yes. Based on current trends, the argument is that containing it, controlling its spread and impact looks, well, impossible.
Which leads to this huge dilemma.
A massive one for our century, yeah. We're becoming totally dependent on these texts, but they also pose this grave danger, a real catch-22, like you said.
And the author brings in their personal experience too, don't they, from DeepMind?
They do. They reflect on founding DeepMind, aiming to replicate intelligence and how that journey made them increasingly worried about the unintended consequences.
That personal angle adds a lot of weight, I think. Someone right at the cutting edge voicing these concerns.
Definitely. And the chapter also talks about this pessimism aversion trap.
Ah, yes. How we tend to shy away from thinking about bad future scenarios.
Right. And the author insists we need a clear-eyed confrontation with what's coming. We can't just ignore the potential downsides.
And the chapter ends on a pretty powerful note.
It does. It basically says, look, based on how things are going, containment seems impossible right now, but it has to become possible for our survival, essentially.
Okay, so that really sets the stage for the rest of the book. Why is it so hard, and what, if anything, can we do?
Exactly. So we've got this powerful wave coming, seemingly unstoppable. Part then digs into why that is, starting with chapter 2. Endless proliferation. What's the thinking here?
This chapter basically lays out the historical groundwork. It argues that technology just naturally tends to spread far and wide. Think about the internal combustion engine cars.
Right. Once they prove useful, they didn't stay niche for long.
Exactly, they spread everywhere. The chapter suggests that the convenience and the benefits usually win out over the initial fears. It tells you something about us and progress.
What drives that spread, according to the chapter?
Several things. Basic human needs the tech meets, fierce competition between companies and people, costs naturally falling as things scale up, and the tech itself just getting better and better. More capable.
It's like a self-feeding cycle, isn't it?
Pretty much. Then it brings in this really important idea. General purpose technologies, GPTs.
Ah, the big ones.
Yeah, the truly game-changing stuff that shifts whole societies. Fire, farming, writing, the printing press, electricity, computing. These are the technologies that rewire everything.
And the argument is that these waves are actually speeding up.
Yes, a few reasons. More people means bigger markets and more potential innovators. More specialization means faster progress in specific fields.
And technology building on itself.
Critically, yes. The compounding effect, old tech, combining to make new tech that really accelerates the whole process.
And computing is the poster child for this exponential growth.
For sure. The chapter highlights just how fast and far computing has spread, driven mainly by Moore's law. The whole doubling of transistors every couple of years.
Right, leading to that exponential power increase and cost decrease.
Exactly. It's not just gradual improvement. It's this explosive growth in power at lower cost.
Yeah.
And that's really what's underpinning this current wave the author describes.
So the main takeaway from chapter 2 is that spreading everywhere is just what technology does. It's the default.
Precisely. Relentless proliferation is the phrase used, which sets up why containing the next wave is such a massive headache.
Okay, which leads us straight into chapter 3. The containment problem. If tech spreads so easily, why is it so hard to control the fallout?
Well, this chapter tackles that head on. The difficulty of managing tech and its consequences, the containment problem. It starts by pointing out how often inventors lose control.
Right, the classic unintended consequences, like CFCs wrecking the ozone layer when they were meant to be safe refrigerants.
Exactly. Those are the revenge effects. The chapter talks about outcomes that totally undermine the original goal.
So how does the chapter define containment in this context?
It defines it as society's ability to monitor, limit, control, and maybe even stop technologies based on our values and goals.
Sounds like a tall order. Have we ever actually managed to contain a major technology?
Well, the chapter looks at history, attempts to ban the printing press, crossbows sometimes, the Luddite smashing machines.
And the verdict?
Generally, these efforts failed in the long run, mostly because the demand for what the tech offered just became too strong. People wanted it.
But it does mention a couple of partial successes.
Yes, nuclear weapons are the big one. Imperfect containment, for sure, but the sheer danger led to huge costs, complexity, MAD, non-proliferation treaties.
But the risk is still there?
Oh, absolutely. The chapter makes that clear. And the Montreal Protocol on CFCs is another example?
Right, phasing out the ozone depleting stuff?
Correct. It shows international cooperation can work to contain tech to some degree. But the author argues these successes probably aren't enough for the scale and nature of AI and synthetic biology.
So the challenge is flipped. It used to be about creating power, and now it's about managing it.
That's the core message. The main task of our time has shifted from unleashing power, which drove progress for ages, to somehow containing it and its potentially devastating consequences.
Okay, so part 1. Powerful wave, probably unstoppable, hard to control historically. Got it. Part 2 then dives into the next wave itself, starting with chapter 4, the technology of intelligence. Given the author's background, this must be detailed.
Oh yeah, definitely. This focuses squarely on AI, and the author uses their DeepMind experience to show how fast things are moving. They talk about the DQN algorithm learning to play breakout in really novel ways.
Right, that was an early sign that AI could actually discover stuff, not just follow orders.
Exactly. Then it moves to AlphaGo, beating Lisa Dahl at Go. Huge moment. The chapter highlights Move 37, this totally unexpected, brilliant move.
Yeah, that really captured everyone's attention, didn't it? Felt like AI showed real, superhuman insight.
It did. The chapter then explains the rise of deep learning, which is behind a lot of recent breakthroughs. AlexNet in computer vision is the example how neural networks trained on tons of data got amazing at recognizing images.
And then, of course, the large language models, the LLMs, that are everywhere now.
Yep. GPT-3, ChatGPT, LaMDA. The chapter discusses how they work, the attention mechanisms, the transformer architecture.
Allowing them to generate that incredibly human-like text and code.
Based on just vast amounts of training data.
Yeah.
And the pace seems just relentless.
The chapter really hammers this home. It points to the exponential growth in computing power used for training the scaling hypothesis, plus big improvements in making the training itself more efficient, so you get this double whammy driving progress.
It also introduces a term maybe not everyone knows, artificial capable intelligence, ACI. How's that different from AGI, and why does it matter now?
Right, so AGI, artificial general intelligence, is this sort of sci-fi idea of human-level AI across the board. ACI is framed as a more useful near-term concept, meaning AI that can achieve complex multi-step goals with minimal human help. It's about practical capability and autonomy on specific tasks, not necessarily consciousness.
So more focused on what AI can do soon rather than what it is.
Exactly. And later, when the book touches on AGI risks like the paperclip maximizer, it rightly circles back to the more immediate threats from ACI amplifying human mistakes or malice.
Gotcha. And there's this modern Turing test mentioned too.
Yeah, forget just tricking a human in chat. This test is about an AI achieving a complex, real-world business goal all by itself.
Highlights the shift to real-world impact.
Precisely. The chapter wraps up by stressing how fast AI is moving and how it's a meta-technology, something that will change pretty much every other field.
Okay, so intelligence is getting automated.
Yeah.
Now, Chapter 5. The technology of life turns to the other pillar, synthetic biology. What's the story here?
This chapter frames synthetic biology as basically the engineering of life itself. It starts with the history from selective breeding way back when to modern genetic engineering.
Like discovering DNA structure, gene splicing.
Right. But things really took off with the Human Genome Project, learning to read the code of life, and the chapter highlights how the cost of sequencing DNA just plummeted.
The Carlson curve, even faster than Moore's law.
Right. Exactly. So reading the code got cheap. Then came CRISPR gene editing tools to precisely edit that code.
CRISPR has been huge, yeah. Massive implications for medicine and everything else.
Definitely. But the chapter says synthetic biology goes further than just reading and editing. The key is gene synthesis.
Actually making DNA.
Yeah, manufacturing DNA strands, even totally new ones from scratch. This lets us do what the chapter calls evolution by design, using computers to engineer biology for specific jobs.
Wow. Sounds incredibly powerful. What kind of applications are we talking about?
A huge range. Viruses that make batteries, engineered organs, algae that suck up more CO2, gene drives to change whole populations, personalized medicine based on your genes, anti-aging tech, using microbes as tiny factories, biomanufacturing.
It's mind-boggling. And this ties back to AI, too.
Absolutely crucial connection. The chapter uses AlphaFold as the prime example, DeepMind's AI solving the protein folding problem.
Which was a massive challenge in biology.
Huge. And AI solving it dramatically speeds up understanding biology, designing drugs, creating new biomolecules. It's like AI is learning the actual language of biology.
Okay, so AI advances information, synthetic biology advances manipulating life. Then Chapter 6. The wider wave broadens the view again. What else is in this mix?
This chapter says AI and symbio aren't happening in a vacuum. They're part of a bigger cluster of technologies that feed off each other. Robotics is the obvious one, AI getting a physical body.
Moving beyond just factory arms.
Yeah, towards general-purpose robots, autonomous tractors on farms, John Deere gets a mention, warehouse robots like Amazon's Proteus and Sparrow, robots for homes, surgery, even swarms.
And they're getting smarter and cheaper.
Exactly. More autonomous, less human control needed, lower cost. The chapter also notes their use in sensitive areas, like that Dallas police robot incident. Raises tricky questions.
For sure. What else is part of this wider wave?
Quantum computing. Still early days, but it promises exponential leaps in computing power.
Which could break current encryption.
Q-Day. That's the big worry, yeah. But also, huge potential for optimization, materials science, chemistry, drug discovery, modeling things classical computers can't handle.
The energy to power all this must be immense.
Good point. The chapter touches on the shift to cheaper, cleaner energy, especially solar, and the long-term hope for nuclear fusion. These are seen as essential enablers for the wave. And it briefly mentions advanced nanotechnology manipulating matter at the atomic level, another potential game changer down the line.
So the big picture here is a shift from automating information to automating, well, action and physical stuff.
That's it, a fundamental change in what technology can do.
Okay, so with that picture of converging tech, Chapter 7. 4 features of the coming wave explains why this wave is so hard to contain. What are these features?
Right, this chapter isolates 4 core characteristics. First is asymmetry,
Meaning,
meaning small players, individuals, groups, even small states can have huge impacts way out of proportion to their size. Think Ukraine using cheap drones effectively against Russia's military?
it lowers the bar for causing major disruption.
Exactly. It democratizes powerful tools, weaponized drones, AI cyber attacks, maybe engineered pathogens, and it creates these systemic weak spots where one attack can ripple outwards.
Okay, that's asymmetry. What's number 2?
Hyper-evolution. Basically, innovation is accelerating like crazy, even in the physical world. AI designing new materials, better chips, biological circuits.
So progress happens at digital speed, but in the real world.
Yeah, and it makes it almost impossible for laws and society to keep up. By the time you regulate one thing, 10 new things have popped up.
Like trying to regulate a swarm of bees. Okay, third feature.
Omni-use. These technologies are inherently general purpose. They can be used for countless good and bad things, often simultaneously.
The dual use problem, but on steroids.
Pretty much. AI for drug discovery or designing toxins, it's hard to know intent, hard to predict risks. The chapter mentions DeepMind's Gato AI, which can do hundreds of different tasks. How do you regulate that?
Makes it incredibly difficult to draw lines.
And the last feature, autonomy. We're building systems that operate and make decisions without direct human oakage. Okay. Self-driving cars, AlphaGo's weird moves. The trend is towards more autonomy, maybe even self-improvement or self-replication. Systems become black boxes we don't fully get. This leads to the ultimate control issue, the gorilla problem.
The idea that once it's out, you can't easily put it back in the cage.
Exactly. Regaining control might be near impossible.
Okay, so asymmetry, hyperevolution, omni-use, autonomy, that's a potent cocktail making containment tough. Now, Chapter 8, unstoppable incentives. Why is this wave moving so fast? What's pushing it?
This chapter argues there are these really powerful, interconnected forces driving development and spread, making it seem almost inevitable. First up, geopolitics and national security.
The arms race dynamic.
Totally. Nations feel they have to have the latest tech to stay ahead or just survive. Think the space race or the US-China tech rivalry now, partly kicked off by things like AlphaGo.
China's big push for AI leadership is a key example.
Yeah, their national strategy. It's pure techno-nationalism countries seeing tech dominance as vital for global power. And it's not just US, China, the EU, India, others are in the game too.
So global competition is a huge accelerator. What's next?
The open research ecosystem. Science generally thrives on openness, publishing results, sharing code, peer review.
Which helps spread knowledge quickly.
Massively. Think open source on GitHub, preprints on ArcSiv, academic conferences, corporate R&D labs publishing papers. It's this global, decentralized system that's very hard to control centrally.
Openness speeds things up, but makes containment harder.
Okay, instead of 3.
Financial gain and economic necessity. Simple, really. There's potentially trillions of dollars to be made here.
Right.
That drives massive corporate investment, huge amounts of venture capital pour in. Everyone wants a piece of the action. History has examples like the railway booms, the economic promise, fuels a frenzy.
Money talks, especially that much money. Fourth incentive, solving global challenges. There's a genuine need for these technologies, right? Climate change, disease, food security, aging populations.
We kind of need breakthroughs.
Many people believe so. So there's a strong pull to develop these tools to tackle our biggest problems. Necessity driving invention.
Makes sense? And the final incentive.
Ego and human drive. Just basic human nature, really. Curiosity, ambition, competition, the desire for prestige, wanting to make history, solve hard problems.
The technically sweet impulse, as Oppenheimer put it.
Exactly. That lure of cracking a tough challenge. And when you bundle all these incentives together, geopolitics, openness, money, need, ambition, it creates this almost unstoppable momentum. The chapter calls it a slime mold just rolling forward.
Wow. Okay, so the incentives are massive and deeply ingrained. That leads us into part 3, which sounds ominous. States of failure, starting with Chapter 9. The grand bargain. What bargain is this?
This chapter looks at the basic deal between citizens and the state. We give the state the monopoly on using force.
In exchange for order, security, public services, the social contract.
Exactly. The grand bargain. The author argues this fundamental deal, which has underpinned stability and progress for centuries, is starting to fray, especially in democracies.
Why is it fracturing?
The chapter mentions the author's own government experiences, highlighting state limitations and complexities even before this new tech wave hits hard. plus existing problems. Falling trust in institutions, inequality, polarization, populism.
So the system is already stressed.
Right, and technology isn't neutral here. The author stresses tech has always shaped politics. Writing enabled administration, the printing press fueled nationalism, weapons defined state power.
So this new wave isn't just a technical issue, it's deeply political.
Fundamentally, it poses challenges that could further destabilize already strained nation-states.
Okay, so the foundation is shaky. Chapter 10. Fragility Amplifiers then explores how this wave makes things worse. What are these amplifiers?
This chapter details how the wave will basically pour fuel on existing fires, amplifying state weaknesses. It kicks off with the WannaCry Petya cyber attacks.
Right, those used leaked NSA tools, didn't they?
They did. Showed how vulnerable critical infrastructure is. The UK's NHS got hit hard. And it highlights asymmetric threats, less powerful actors causing huge damage. The argument is future AI cyber weapons will be way worse.
And cyber is just one example. What else amplifies fragility?
Several things. Democratized offensive capabilities, cheap but potent tools becoming widely available. Think armed drones, like the one used in that Iranian scientist's assassination, or easily made bioweapons.
It undermines the state's monopoly on violence.
Exactly. Then there's misinformation and disinformation. AI making deepfakes and synthetic media super realistic and scalable.
Fueling propaganda, messing with elections, eroding trust. The infocalypse.
Yep. Political deepfakes in India, Russian, and Chinese campaigns. For you listening, it means telling fact from fiction online is just going to get harder and harder.
Undermining shared reality. What about accidents?
Accidents and unintended consequences are another big one. Not just malice, but errors, system failures. Lab leaks are mentioned, the 1977 flu, maybe COVID. Risks from gain-of-function research. AI failures in critical systems.
Scary stuff. And the economic impact.
Automation and job displacement. The potential for AI and robots to displace lots of workers' cognitive and physical jobs, leading to inequality, pressure on public finances, maybe social unrest.
And these all interact.
Yeah, the chapter stresses they compound each other, creating complex crises that weaken the state further.
Okay, so the wave hits an already fragile system and makes it worse. Chapter 11. The future of nations looks longer term. How might political structures change?
This chapter suggests really profound shifts, arguing the wave pushes towards both more concentration and more fragmentation at the same time, shaking up the whole nation-state model.
Concentration how?
Power and wealth getting even more concentrated in superstar corporations. Think giants that might rival states in influence, like the old East India Company or maybe Samsung today. AI could boost their power.
Companies controlling key tech, providing state-like services.
Potentially, yeah. Leading to maybe more inequality, this techno-feudalism idea.
Okay, but also fragmentation. How does that work?
Paradoxically, the same tech empowers individuals and small groups. Cheap AI, accessible biotech like CRISPR, open source stuff, local renewables. People could go off-grid, bypass the state.
Like techno-libertarianism or maybe new kinds of political actors?
Exactly. The Hezbollahization idea, hybrid groups, secession movements, maybe even corporate microstates. Biological enhancements could also create new social divides. It sounds messy.
Very messy. And the risk of more state control.
That's the third force, surveillance and authoritarianism. States, especially authoritarian ones, using AI facial recognition, big data, social credit systems to monitor and control populations like never before.
Techno-dictatorships surpassing Orwell.
That's the fear. China is the main example, but the tech spread. So you have these clashing forces, concentration, fragmentation, surveillance, creating massive turbulence for the nation state.
Okay, the future looks potentially chaotic for nations. This all builds up to Chapter 12, the dilemma. What's the core dilemma here?
This chapter pulls it all together. The central dilemma is we seem trapped between two awful outcomes: catastrophe from uncontained tech or dystopia from the extreme measures needed to contain it.
Let's unpack that. What kinds of catastrophe?
Building on earlier points, AI, drone swarms, engineered pandemics, intentional by terrorists like ABM Shinrikyo or accidental lab leaks, autonomous weapons, escalating conflicts, AI failures in critical systems.
It mentions AGI risks, but focuses more on near-term ACI dangers.
Right. Amplifying human malice or error with capable AI is seen as the more immediate threat, though AGI isn't dismissed entirely. So big dangers, intentional or accidental.
Okay, that's the catastrophe side. What about the dystopia side?
The argument is the only way to reliably prevent those catastrophes might be extreme, pervasive surveillance and control, a high-tech panopticon.
Monitoring everything, everyone.
Pretty much. To catch misuse or accidents early. But while that might prevent catastrophe, it would create an incredibly authoritarian state, crushing freedom and privacy, a cure worse than the disease for many.
A chilling trade-off indeed. Can't we just stop developing this stuff?
The chapter tackles the stagnation option, rejecting the tech via moratoriums, but it argues that's not viable either.
Why not?
Because we face huge existing problems, climate, resources, demographics, that many think require these technological breakthroughs. So stopping progress could lead to a different kind of disaster just from inaction.
So we're stuck, locked between catastrophe, dystopia, and stagnation. No easy outs.
That's the grim conclusion of this part. Wicked trade-offs seemingly pushing us towards bad outcomes either way.
A really stark picture. But part 4, Through the Wave, tries to offer some hope, starting with chapter 13. Containment must be possible. How does it argue this?
Despite painting that bleak picture, this chapter pivots. It says, look, containment has to be possible. It's imperative. It critiques just relying on regulation.
Why isn't regulation enough?
Because it's usually slow, tech evolves super fast, hyper-evolution. The tech has too many uses, omni-use. Governments lack expertise. Nations compete fiercely. And the whole system is global and decentralized. Regulation alone can't cope.
So, need something broader.
Yeah, a unified concept of containment, integrating technical safety, ethics, governance, international cooperation, getting beyond talking about risks in silos.
And overcoming that pessimism aversion.
Crucially, actively working towards making containment feasible, finding that narrow path between catastrophe and dystopia.
Okay, so it must be possible. Chapter 14. 10 steps toward containment, then suggests how. What are these steps?
It lays out 10 interconnected actions, not a silver bullet, but ways to create the conditions for containment. First is safety.
The name.
Massive investment in technical safety R&D for AI and biotech, like an Apollo program for safety.
Wow.
Alignment, control, explainability, managing uncertainty, making systems fixable, physical containment for bio risks.
And mandating safety spending.
Yeah, dedicating a chunk of R&D budgets just to safety. Build it in from the start.
Okay, makes sense. Step 2.
Audits. Rigorous, independent checks on AI and biotech. Government red teams, maybe even AIs auditing other AIs. Know your customer for AI services, screening DNA synthesis orders, verification and accountability.
Got it. Third step.
Choke points. Strategically using bottlenecks in the supply chain like advanced chips from TSMC or NVIDIA, or access to huge computing power.
To slow things down?
Temporarily, yeah. To buy time for safety and regulation to catch up, like the U.S. chip controls on China.
Using dependency strategically. Fourth step.
Makers. Getting the technologists themselves to take more responsibility. Encouraging critics to build solutions, not just point fingers. Fostering more diversity in tech teams.
Responsibility from the creators. Fifth.
Businesses. Exploring new corporate structures like public benefit corporations or B Corp that build safety and social purpose into their legal mandates, not just profit. Trying to align incentives better.
Okay. Step 6.
Governments. They need to step up. Build technical expertise, monitor tech trends, regulate smartly, maybe licensing for powerful AI bio, reform taxes to handle disruption and fund safety.
A more capable state role. Seventh.
Alliances. International cooperation is key. Treaties, like for nuclear non-proliferation or the Montreal Protocol, sharing info, harmonizing rules, setting global norms, even between rivals. Maybe an AI audit authority.
Global problems need global solutions. Eighth step.
Culture. Shifting the culture in tech towards openness about failures like aviation, prioritizing safety, accepting limits, maybe a Hippocratic oath for technologists.
An ethical shift. Ninth.
Movements, building public awareness and pressure, citizen groups, popular movements demanding responsible tech development, creating a collective we that pushes for safety.
Public engagement. And the final step. 10.
The narrow path. This just ties it all together, recognizing that navigating between catastrophe and dystopia needs all these steps working together. Containment isn't a one-off fix, it's an ongoing process.
A continuous effort on many fronts.
Oh, okay.
And the book finishes with life after the Anthropocene. What's the final takeaway message?
It reflects on the Luddites. They failed to stop the Industrial Revolution, but their descendants eventually benefited hugely. The point isn't to resist this wave, because that's probably futile.
But to shape it.
Exactly. To actively sculpt it. Make sure technology serves human values, rather than humanity just getting reshaped by tech in random, potentially bad ways. We have a responsibility to guide it.
Towards the future we actually want.
Yeah, a future with maybe AI companions, bioengineered realities, but hopefully amplifying the best of us, supporting flourishing lives decided democratically. But getting there needs that huge collective effort to walk the narrow path with determination and hope.
A powerful call to action.
Yeah.
Okay, so wrapping up our deep dive here, the main point from the coming wave is this profound dilemma posed by AI and biotech and the urgent need to figure out containment.
Definitely. Highlighting those 4 tough features: asymmetry, hyperevolution, omni-use, autonomy, driven by those seemingly unstoppable incentives.
And spelling out the potential failures, catastrophe on one side, dystopia on the other, stagnation in the middle. The stakes feel incredibly high.
They really do. But the book doesn't leave us there. It offers that 10-step framework as a potential way forward.
Right, a comprehensive approach needing technical work, audits, alliances, cultural shifts, government action, everything working together.
That's a massive undertaking.
It really is. So maybe a final thought for you, listening. Which of those 10 steps feels most critical to you? Or maybe which feels like the biggest hurdle to overcome? And perhaps how might you personally play a part in helping us navigate this narrow path?
It's definitely a conversation that involves all of us.
Absolutely. These technologies are going to reshape our world. Thinking about it, talking about it, that's where shaping a better outcome starts.
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the coming wave. We'll catch you on the next one.